Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our open office hours. This is our final open office hours in our Built on Value series that we've been doing with Jason. We have already, I will actually add your screen to the stage. We've talked about being human, purposeful, responsible, respectful, and today we're going to be talking about open. And I feel like this one encompasses a lot.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm like goofing around with my audio settings here. Yeah, this is like the ultimate core value. It's the last one on the list. But it's really important. It's probably the one that started the whole business here and like why we do what we do. We saw folks making cool software with open source, way back in like 2007 or 8. We had code we built for our own customers, but then we saw like the power of building in an open source way and distributing your code and letting other people build off your code and the reach it could have. And we were like, oh yeah, we want some of that. And that's, was built into the foundation of us launching Paid Memberships Pro as a plugin. So yeah, I'm excited to go through this. There's been part of the recent journey too, and how we, our realization that we're actually more open source than WordPress is. This value used to say we are committed to open source and the WordPress way, and I'll kind of get into some of the thoughts we had around WordPress way and everyone having different opinions of what that meant. And we're like, oh, I don't like any of those opinions. I like us. Let's just be committed to open source. And even, open source now is inside WordPress and outside of WordPress. Everyone has a different opinion of what it really means. And there's like, there's a open source foundation, and there's, different nonprofit groups that define it, and they overlap and they have some common goals, but there's also lots of stuff like Facebook releases an AI, their LLM products, and they say they're open source, but actually if you use it where you make a certain amount of money, then you have to pay them. And then folks are like, wait, that's not open source. Open source doesn't have a how much you can make limit. And people will give the same, they'll say the same thing about Matt Mullenweg trying to get large companies that are making a bunch of money off their WordPress products to pay back to his foundation. And folks in the open source community say, wait, it's not supposed to work that way. That like it's open source until you make a certain amount of money, and then you have to pay for it in a certain way.
I'll also add that I think out of all of them, when the core values were really set in stone and presented to the entire team, that open was probably the hardest one to define, because it was written in a way about the development side of things of being open source. And like you said, it did say the WordPress way, which we've changed, but it's also beyond development. It's open communication. There's just so much more that it encompasses outside of the development world.
Yeah, including why we're talking about it on our quote unquote open office hours. It's like, hey, let's like peel back the curtain and let folks see how we operate behind the scenes. Let's share these values. It's useful for our customers and our users to see how we operate, and hold us accountable. Like my favorite thing is when someone on the team or even someone outside the team says, but wait, aren't you committed to open source? Why wouldn't you do this? And you're like, wait, thank you for holding us accountable. Yeah, and also other companies in the space or other companies trying to make money off open source. I think it's tough. I think not everyone's as lucky as Kim and I are to have each other as like two competent business people to find a way to make money off open source projects. But we've managed to do it in a way that is in alignment with our values, and we do well. And so when I see someone with very useful open source code in any domain, but they're like, I wish I could just work on this all day. I don't want to have a day job for the man. I'm like, well, we have one path that worked for us that maybe we can learn lessons from. So it's nice to share about our journey as well, so other folks can learn from it. Yeah. And so it's pretty exciting. Well, I'll be chatting about open source on this call, and then maybe taking a stab at doing my outro.
Oh, well, actually,
or mid roll.
we were running late behind, but I actually have it set up to where I will have to cue the mid roll. So about halfway through, I'll pause you for the mid roll. But for the outro, it's actually set up that when I hit in stream, it will autoplay the outro, and so we actually don't have to remember to like say it and rehearse it. It's an automatic thing. Yeah. So stay tuned for some new clips and videos that we're adding to our.
Stay tuned for our ads. Yeah. Hit that like and subscribe button. Actually, add a comment to this one and hit like. It's important on this one. This is the end of the core value series. But if you're excited about us talking about this stuff or what we've been doing for the past, 5 sessions here, let us know. It gives us important feedback that we should keep doing that. Or maybe we'll pivot to, getting more hands-on or something. But, we like to put out all kinds of content. All right, let me look at my list here. Yeah, so why are we committed to open source software? I think so. We believe that open source software results in the best software. There's kind of relatively few exceptions. I mean, I think of like Adobe Photoshop as a good counter example. Like for some reason, there's really good open source photo editing tools, but like that Adobe team just keeps kind of pushing the edge, and people just love that workflow and how it works. Although, Canva disrupted it, but it was another closed source solution, and Adobe ended up buying them. But there are alternatives, but I think their software is really good. So there's some examples of like really good commercial software that's closed, but a lot of the software that we interact with, especially in the WordPress world, from the server side of Linux to Git that we use to manage our code, to a bunch of the tools that we use to Apache and Nginx to like host the websites, to WordPress itself, like these values, and like the GNU public license is the version of the license that WordPress uses and we use, and I don't have to get into the nitty gritty of it, but it's kind of encouraging people to build on top of what you have, like showing your work, showing your code and how you did it. If you did something cool, this feels like pushing humanity forward at like a root level. It's like, oh, I built something really cool. Instead of like holding onto it myself and just trying to make as much money off it as possible, I'm going to share this with the world. And sometimes we've released open source software and the world yawns. They're like, yeah, we don't actually need that thing. Thanks though. And sometimes we shared our open source software and the world is like, yeah, that's perfect. I'm going to use that. And so Paid Memberships Pro, tens of thousands of sites now, and other, software in this space. A large part of, why it's being used and useful is because it's open source. It's also stuff like customizability and being able to change it and tweak it. One of the, there's a concept of quote unquote obfuscating the code, which is like scrambling it up to make it harder to understand so people can't, figure out how you did it. Like that just seems counterintuitive if you want people to be able to build off and integrate on your stuff. And the way that websites in particular are made, it's kind of all about the integrations. And so like, closed source solutions on the web don't do as well as open source ones. So that's how we feel. It's like, hey, we want to make the best software. We want people to build on top of it. We want people to use it. We want to make it as easy to use. We believe there's a kind of physics to software. In reality, people want the software, they want it immediately, and they want it free. Like that's just the way it is. That's what they want. And anytime you go against those demands of the market, those needs, there's a friction there. And so you have to choose, like, is it worth it to put up that friction? If you are trying to make money off your software by charging a license, it's like, that's a business model. Lots of companies do that, but you're kind of going after a different thing than like, I want as many people as possible to use and benefit from this software. So we're always like, let's make the best software. Let's get as many people as possible using it, and we'll be able to figure out how to build a business on top of it. And so, yeah, some of the big kind of actions speak louder than words, because I think a lot of companies in the WordPress space are reluctantly open source. It feels like it was forced upon them by, Matt in particular, back around 2011 or 12. There was arguments around using the GPL. And at that time, I think Matt, was still very, in line with the open source values and wanted to use WordPress and WordPress.org as like a mechanism for pushing people to support open source. But what really happened was people just reluctantly put a license file in their folder, and they didn't really do what we think is what we refer to as like embracing the open source philosophy. Don't like, I'm pretty sure in the footer of the homepage is a mention about the GNU license and that this is open source and free. And we have paidmembershipspro.com/free, which explains how you can use all of our stuff for free. Free as in beer and, free as in speech. All of our code in the core plugin, you can download for free. It updates for free on our website. And the core plugin it compares favorably to, in general, to paid membership platforms we compete against. So what that means is we have more features in our core plugin than other paid plugins have in their core paid plugin, plus add-ons. And honestly, it's like an interesting thing is like our decision on what goes into an add-on is not commercial. It's based on usage numbers. Is it going to be easier for us to maintain this as a separate add-on? We can more quickly iterate on a sub feature for a subset of users versus like 50% of our users, more than that, really. It's paid memberships pro, but most of our users need a gateway. We put the gateways into the core plugin, or at least one or a few gateway options, right, that we support the most. And so the code is dictating like how we split things up rather than the business model. Now we also, in addition to that, like all of our add-ons. So like I said, some things are managed as add-ons, and we have this like if you're on our website and you see an add-on, we have there's like this, you can still ask for money for open source software. So that's kind of like this, a little bit of an aha that some folks have, that just because folks can get it for free, I can still package it up on my website in an easier to digest manner that's more comfortable for businesses that are buying this thing for their business. So there's add-ons with price tags. We have like bundled up options, which are more, in alignment with how people like to buy this kind of software. But all those add-ons, the code for them are available for free on GitHub. And so you can interact with the code and see how the code uses and try it out before you buy from us. Or, 90% of folks who use Paid Memberships Pro don't pay for a paid plan from us. They just use our code that's available for free. And we love that. Like we put our code available for free, and we still are able to build a profitable business on top of it. Maybe not as profitable as it could be if we closed up and just focused on, the 20% of customers that are willing to pay, but still a profitable business. And that's uncommon. I don't think there's many companies that do that. I mean, even, that the idea, I think, that of open source that other companies have is we'll build it in this way. And in the WordPress space with PHP, the way the code is, you kind of have to deliver the code to the end user for them to use it. And so people don't generally obfuscate the code. But there's other tricks where you push things to a service. And I think for the most part, the market doesn't tolerate things that are services that don't have to be. So most of the stuff that's pushed to a service is something that has to be like on another website. Like if you integrate with a Kismet, that huge database of spam and processing it and figuring out what spam has to be run on their giant servers and doesn't make sense to run locally in WordPress. So that makes sense. It's like, hey, the big old service is over here and you pay to integrate. Yeah, I don't know. I'm getting into technicals of this, but we, our software, it's all of it available for free. Other companies think we make the code and like, you can see our code if, it's like an afterthought. It's like, it's not the primary distribution is once we publish this code, we're going to put it out there for free for anyone to use, is not the primary distribution for most of these companies. It's an afterthought. It's like, after we make it, yeah, I guess the code's out there and they can have it.
Just a couple comments that I want to take mention of. Craig said that this philosophy is what drew them to PMPro, and it does stand out. And then GR said, we pay because we run our business on PMPro. Also, we appreciate the top-notch support. It's worth every penny.
Cool. And we appreciate you. I don't know if we still do it, but we used to, in the bullet points of the benefits of a paid membership at Paid Memberships Pro, we would put one that's like this also, but this supports, we support you, and this supports the company that pays the folks to continue working on the plugin. And I think some people that does speak to them. And anyway, so that's great. I appreciate that. And I think, that our users definitely appreciate this stuff. Like, another tenet of open source is like the flexibility of it and the ability to change things and tweak things to your liking. And especially in the membership space, another kind of core idea that we had when we built Paid Memberships Pro was that, in our experience already helping other membership sites at the time, like, they all had something a little different. Everyone wanted something slightly different. And it was important to them that it worked perfectly. And I mean, it's kind of, I think we have like 8 use cases or something. It's like, there's a lot of different sites that use Paid Memberships Pro. And even within that, there's folks who have different ideas on how to, organize levels, how to pay price levels, how to manage renewals, how to, manage invites, all the, different stuff that we do. And building in an open source way, it's like in our bones that we're like, yeah, that's cool. You should be able to build on top of this. Like, we're not hiding the code. We're building the code in a way to make it easy to interoperate with other things. And so, like, another aspect of how open source kind of comes up in us developing software, we're making software, is that we want the code and the UI and the user experience to be familiar to developers and other people who are building and using our software. And so that's kind of part of embracing open source is, let's not make it overly clever and unique. Let's make sure that we do things in a way that people expect. It's going to be more useful to them if we build things in the way they expect. Now, this is a challenging one in building code, because it also competes with like being human, right? So specifically writing code, we think, hey, a human might have to read this. And so sometimes what we call like code, the coding standards, or we think of like the relevant coding standards that we should be following to make it easy for folks to interact with our code. Sometimes they go through trends that don't feel very human to us, and we kind of ignore those. Like, literally, I mean, a goofy one that smells like Yoda notation is this idea of, when you write an if statement in the code, you reverse the way that you're comparing two things, like Yoda would do in Star Wars. Like, what's like a Yoda quote? Yeah. It would be,
there is no try, only do.
Yeah, there is no try, only do. Yeah. Is that like a Yoda's reverse? There is no try.
It's a Yodaism, that's for sure.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's reverse, but it is a Yodaism.
I wish I had like a whiteboard here. You're like, hey, is this variable A equal to 1, or do you check is 1 equal to A? And I think coders have gotten used to this, to put the 1 on the left or the A on the right. But we make a judgment that, like, if a human was reading this, what would make sense to them, rather than like if Yoda, the fictional character that talks backward, was reading this, what would make sense to him? And so, like, that's the case, but in general, like, we want people to be able to use the code. I think of, I'm getting into nitty gritty too. Also, by the way, I should say, like, a lot of this isn't judgment that this is the only way to make code. I just think it's the best way to make code. It's not necessarily the best way to make money. It's not the best way to make something big. It's not the best way to, in all ways, it's, it's like other people have other goals and reasons they're making decisions. And I bring that up because I'm, kind of, it might seem like I'm talking down on these other companies. I think they're just making different decisions based on what's important to them. So for instance, a really awesome theme is the collection of StudioPress themes or Genesis themes, right? I think StudioPress was a company bought by WP Engine. Genesis was a core theme, and they had like 80 or so like sub child themes. And when we built websites back in the day, we really liked those themes. They looked really good. There was a wide range of themes for all different use cases. And we would basically show that page to our customers and say, which one of these do you want? And then we would buy that theme for them, right? And it's in a, Genesis or StudioPress subscription. But if you looked at their code, like in the header file, it would say like call the header function. And then when you would look at the header function, it would say like call this thing, call this thing, call this other thing. And and you're like, okay. And then you would dig in and you would go like 3 or 4 levels deep before you found like the HTML code that managed like, here's what the header is. And you're like, oh, like for a human that wants to look at the code, that's a little onerous. They got to like bounce around through files. And you can say, hey, they have documentation. Hey, if you had a good IDE with a good search, or it makes sense. But I mean, I'm not, I never actually brought this up with the folks who originally coded that, but that system is easier for them to maintain, but it makes it harder for folks to read, right? So anyway, we have values of human and open source. Our version of open source, you know, is like, hey, sometimes we do a little bit more effort maintaining something. It makes it easier for other developers to read this code.
That was something I mentioned in the last Coding with Sam episode, was that I can read the code.
Okay, yeah, it's good.
Like any code recipe, I can sit there and go, okay, yeah, that's happening there, and then this is what it's calling, and then if this doesn't happen, that happens. It's readable like a book.
And I think this is a challenge in the code. We're talking about code a lot, but like since day one of WordPress, and you know, it's on PHP, which also has this kind of stigma of it's not a real programming language. And then WordPress, you know, anyone could just dig in there and tweak things and get stuff done. Or, you know, a lot of like templating used to be copy and paste a code and then change it. And some people would say that's a downside to WordPress because it allows folks who don't know how to code to get in and code, which is like, no, like open as many people as possible, bring them on. Lots of people learn the code this way. Like we want as many people interacting with the code as possible. You don't want to say you have to like, you know, have a PhD or be like an expert programmer to be able to understand this. And so, yeah, we're on the other side of that. We embrace, and that's kind of common in the WordPress space, you know, to feel more that way versus like other programming languages and environments and things. But even within the WordPress space, it's not necessarily a priority, or people feel it as like, I can't wait till, you know, let me build a real grown up programming system on top of this WordPress, or, you know, it needs, I don't know. Yeah.
That's also what's made it to where we can have over 100 different contributors to the core plugin.
Cool. Thanks for checking out that number. Yeah, it's like make it easy for folks. And I don't think we give up anything. Like we definitely, I don't think we give up anything by coding that way. I think we're smart enough software engineers, and we've trained a good team here. Like they, you know, that they know how to make things performant. They know how to make things, you know, relatively easier to maintain. And sometimes we take a hit from not like using the latest and greatest in automation and new tools. And even so, like when PHP releases, PHP versions are moving pretty quickly, and they release like a new, you know, here's all the features in the latest version of PHP, and it's like candy to developers. You're like, oh my God, I typed this thing out, but now I can just do like one character instead of a whole line, or like, you know, these kind of like new programming tools, which are useful and interesting and cool and make programming fun. But I see it in the different light. We're like, oh, if we adopt that, you know, it breaks, you know, our code for everyone who doesn't upgrade to the latest version of PHP right away. So we kind of manage this, like try to manage a window of supported PHP versions and go for as many people as possible, rather than like only the, you know, nerds who are running the latest PHP. Sorry, guys. I say nerd with affection. So another important kind of concept finally that comes up around like us writing code and how the software actually works related to open source is that like we want people to use the code on their own. We you know, there's a bunch of reasons why, you know, we might like that kind of service architecture, like we could do something better over here, so we want to integrate. We try to like contain those things so you can still run our plugin without paying us, without being attached to us. So like when your license expires in paid, if you have a premium license, all those premium plugins that you bought don't stop working. It doesn't lock up. It doesn't go into a read-only mode. We don't, I always feel that's also like purposeful work. It's kind of like, that's purposeful work if your job is to, you know, kind of annoy people into paying for your software. It's like that physics, that like, you know, friction. It's not purposeful work if, you know, it's like extra. if you're just trying to make the software work really good. So it's like, so we're still like, hey, we make the software, we give it away for free. We'll make our money on other things. We're not going to, you know, close up the software when your license expires. And whenever I mean, I'll talk more about how we're, you know, WordPress, that, you know, the nature of open source in the quote unquote WordPress way is changing in this space. And I think companies aren't cooperating as much anymore, and we're not, you know, and for a variety of reasons, and our customers and users kind of want our version of things. Like I was always frustrated, like, hey, do you have a plugin that does this? I'm like, there's a perfectly good plugin over here that like themes your login. There's a perfectly good plugin here that does 2-factor. You know, we don't have to build our own 2-factor plugin or our own themed login plugin is what I thought. But then when the themed login plugin becomes basically a paid membership plugin, we're like, oh, like they can't use that as a theme login for Pay Membership Pro anymore. We have to build in our own themed login system. But on a tangent. Oh, like there's lots of there's lots of motivation for us to build our own versions of things. And so we're kind of moving in that direction. It's like we're serving our customers and they want our version of this. Like, one, because it's for sure going to work with Pay Memberships Pro and keep working with Pay Memberships Pro. And then I think because of these open source values, we're always building stuff in an open source way, and we're going to release it and allow people to use it on their own too.
Lifter LMS says PMPro is awesome. So whoever's watching from Lifter, hello.
Yeah, Lifter LMS is also awesome.
They are.
I wrote an article about the license expire issue because I don't know if it's still the case. Do I call them out in the article? I don't. But it's MemberPress. They changed the feature.
I was wondering if you were going to do that.
I don't know. It doesn't matter. I don't know if they, yeah, it's like, I should have checked if they still do this. But
they do
at some point. Yeah. Okay. If you're paid, like they're a paid plugin first, right? So there's, they have like a free membership plugin. They took over the quote unquote, I think it's just called membership in the .org repository. And it's kind of like their onboarding free version towards MemberPress. But MemberPress, you always pay and then you get the code, right? And then it's technically GPL as well, but I would put it in the camp of reluctantly GPL. Like those guys would wish that people didn't share their code. And maybe like they like that they don't obfuscate the code, so they like that people can see how it works to, you know, build integrations and things like that. But they don't want people, you know, if people aren't paying for their code, like they, you know, well, they'll, you know, they'll lock up the aspects of the code so that you can't change it. And I think like the front end and checkout continues to work, but they'll, you know, you can't change settings or something. They're trying to like, you know, I mean, I don't want to speak too much on their behalf, but it seems like they're trying to like annoy people back into like, you know, paying, or remind them like it's meant that you're paying and you keep your payment up to date. And I think we would like people who are in PMPro Plus to keep their payment up to date. But we try to separate it from the code. It's like the code, you know, like and I feel really, there's some other examples too, like, so WooCommerce has a WooPayments plugin, and I think they're getting upset if you use different payment, you know, Stripe integrations, because WooPayments, when you use their WooPayments integration, you get connected to their Stripe account and they make money for those transactions. But if you use, say, like I think WP Engine has a different Stripe integration, if you use that one, then WP Engine will get payments, you know, that, you know, a kickback fee from Stripe for payments that go through that connection. And I think it's a mindset thing. So I'm going to, again, like I want people to call me out on this, share this with all these people I quote, and then have, you know, start fights in public or whatever. But so I believe that Matt and the folks in charge of WooCommerce believe that they should get the money, you know, from Stripe for your payments, like the fee. They deserve to get that fee because you're using WooCommerce, and WooCommerce is more important than the Stripe integration. There's some version of that. So it's kind of like, hey, we built all this code and we gave it away for free so that we could get this money from Stripe in a sense, right? Or we need this money from Stripe to make enough money to manage the open source software, which is I mean, maybe it's true, but I think maybe, Automatic and WooCommerce are reorganizing to be able to maintain that open source software more inexpensive, with fewer people, less money or something. It's like it doesn't, and figuring out how to make closed source versions of the things to make money. So it's kind of like, anyway, I contrast that. I don't believe I deserve to make money because you're using my open source code. Like, the whole idea is I made it and the team made it and we put it out and we want you to use it and we want you to build on top of it and we want people to integrate with it and we want people to learn from it. And like that, the code has served its goal. And then it's on us to figure out how to make money around that. And again, this is just a different way of thinking. So it's like different companies have different ideas of what it means to be open source. Is it just some of those things that I just listed out, or is it all of those things? But for us, it's kind of like we're, it feels like here's the way to put it. So like in that Stripe situation, I believe the WP Engine version actually does some things that the core, WooCommerce Stripe integration doesn't do. Maybe enables some Stripe features or has like a slightly different look. There's other reasons people might choose between them, but there's kind of like one line of code that says, hey, pay WooCommerce a revenue share for this transaction, or pay WP Engine a revenue share for this transaction. And I feel like if your business model revolves around like one line of code, like if someone tweaks one line of code, your business model falls apart. It's a fragile business model. Or you need to like get out of the open source business and close out that code that you don't want people to change, right? So it's like, just be honest about it. So it's like, we're building open source software. Like we have our own version of this related to fees and Stripe fees as well. Is like and maybe I could be open and transparent about some of that decision. I think we have a blog post that talks about that. But we integrated with Stripe. We have a similar rev share deal with Stripe. And so, Stripe wanted us to implement Stripe Connect, which is like one click button. It's a bit quicker to integrate. You don't have to copy and paste API keys. And so when you connect through like a Stranger Studios account. And then we get a rev share for every transaction that goes through that. And then I think what we also do that's transparent to the user. The rev share doesn't come out from the user money. It kind of comes out from the Stripe end. So the end user, shouldn't be worried about, that money. We also, on the free version, charge an app fee, like 2%. This is like an additional 2% on top of the transaction. And we did this at the time as an idea, like other payment companies were doing that. And that was kind of like the average. I think we were 1% and then we increased it to 2%. So like Easy Digital Downloads, GiveWP, not WooCommerce itself. They don't, I think, charge an app fee on top, but other payment plugins have this app fee. So it was like, hey, we'll do it. And it kind of encourages folks to buy our premium plan, because we would reduce that fee to 0 for the premium plan. But we also thought this is open source. And if we introduce this, people are just going to comment out that line that adds to 2% and keep using the plugin. So what do I do about that? We could do a lot of not purposeful work and like kind of re-architect everything so that like the transactions go through our server. And there's a couple ways we had on paper of here's how we can force our app fee on users, like so that they can use our open source code, but we have this hidden code over here that enforces the app fee. And that feels like not purposeful work. It feels like not in the spirit of open source. And we're like, hey, we don't want to do that. Our older, what we did was we had a filter that said, you could just turn it off by a filter. Or you could put like a line in your WP config. And it's like, hey, don't fork our code just to get rid of 2% app fee. Here's like a blessed way to get rid of it. So it's kind of our way. Like you basically like, you had to opt out of the fee by writing like a line of code or something. And I think someone was selling like a plugin that would like turn the fee off. That's interesting. I wonder how many they sold. So, I mean, I don't know. We operated that way for a few years. And I think ironically, like, I think that a lot of times that app fee wasn't actually being charged and we didn't really notice because this wasn't like the focus of our business. And then we kind of noticed there was a bug in charging the app fee. And so recently this year, we got rid of the filter to remove the app fee. And instead, we now encourage people to swap to using their own keys if they want to get around the fee. And the reason for that is that it's what we realized. I mean, we struggled back and forth over this, and it was everything from like always keep the fee no matter what to like remove the fee and forget about it, right? But how we made our decision was, it seems like that's just a line of code, but it's really like your Stripe account gets connected to our Stripe account, and there's like it's kind of minimal. Maybe it's like 2%, right? But there's like a minimal business risk in like our Stripe account being associated with your Stripe account, and in us having visibility of your Stripe data. That's part of like the Stripe. When you connect to us, only, myself and Kim has access to go in and view these things, and we have controls in place, and we've asked Stripe to like not allow us to do this. I really don't need to see your customer emails just because you're using Stripe Connect. But it's a business risk for us that we're involved. Like it's a business relationship. And so we put a price tag on that business relationship. So the code just works. You don't need the fee, but the business relationship is worth 2%. And so we basically, that, and we'll see. I don't think anyone's going to build like, this is Paid Memberships Pro, it removes the fee, but you can Stripe Connect. Because what we're going to do is, we're trying to move that 2% fee out of the code and into the Connect service. So if you Stripe Connect, but you're using some version of PMPro that doesn't use the fee, we're going to detect that and disconnect you. And it's like, you can use Stripe on your own. And I think it's more like, so we're in this transition, and I like to talk about transition more in a bunch of ways, but it's kind of, there's people who use the code and they, maybe they ask us questions, they watch these videos, they kind of handle everything on their own, but we don't have a business relationship. Like they're not paying us for anything. We don't get a Stripe revenue share. They don't have like a key that's like linking to services on our website. And it's like, that's cool. Like they can use our software. And then as a business, like, oh, if you have a business relationship with us, you're either paying for one of our premium plans, or if you're using the free code and you want to Stripe Connect, like that's a business relationship and it costs 2% of your transaction. And hopefully, like, I think most people, like, they're like, I don't know, whatever. Just how do I use your software for free? And it's like, use your own Stripe keys. And as long as that's supported. And I think it always will be in some sense. Like it's really hard, like our kinds of software, partnering with Stripe, they really want to put us in either like the SaaS bucket or kind of like the fully, open source bucket where like there's nothing, and we're kind of somewhere in between, right? So it's a little weird, but we're trying to like, here's the line. You can use our code without a business relationship, use your own keys, use your code. If you want to connect, it costs 2%. Now we're in a business relationship. And, that's the start of a business relationship. So, I mean, I think that's not how other people are thinking about it. They're kind of like, I want to make I deserve to make, fees. By the way, like I mean, most TBD on like what the effect is for how much money we make, but we lose the revenue share so there's like an app fee and a revenue share. We lose the revenue share if you use your own keys. So it's kind of like, if we were more financially motivated, it's like, hey, just let them be connected. We get a rev share and don't charge them the app fee and just try to handle it. But that didn't really feel right to us. It didn't feel in line with these values.
Before you segue into the next round of what open is, I know we're on with Jason, but here is a short message from Jason.
Hey there. Sorry to interrupt this video, but I wanted to chat with you quick and just see if you're ready to take the next step to get paid with your own membership business. The fastest way to launch and scale a profitable membership site is with our premium plans over at paidmembershipspro.com. It's not just the best platform for managing your members and charging for access to your content. It's a team of experts and a supportive community, all here to help you succeed. We have made it as affordable as possible to get started with deep intro discounts on the first year. Basically, if you like our YouTube channel and running a profitable membership business is a priority for you, I would highly encourage you to click the link in the description of this video or visit paidmembershipspro.com to learn more and maybe join. All right, back to your video.
And we're back.
Nice.
That was Jason's mid-roll.
That was a good test of that.
Yeah, before we continue real quick, GR had another comment and said, this should be a keynote presentation to business leaders. Put your customers first and build real community that will persist and succeed for everyone.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sharon.
I agree. I think it should be a keynote presentation with Jesse Cole from Banana Ball, because he's also, it's like customers first, he's fans first. So that would be really fun.
I mean, in business, some of these things, some of the, I was just talking about like the Stripe fees, and so it's like some of these things like cost us money, which is fine. But then sometimes it feels like a superpower, and I kind of remind the team, it's kind of like, we're actually just trying to solve the problem for our customers, and the other guys aren't always. And it's like, it feels like a superpower. You're like, I don't, and it's good. And it, having these values in place, they were there. These values were there. We just didn't have them defined. So I was talking with another business, and they're struggling with like some issues. And I was like, what do your core values say? And like, they don't have them defined. And they're like, well, our core values say we should do this, but these people are, and it's like, that's the problem. If you don't define them, then not everyone's on board, and you can't kind of point to them and say, hey, remember that you said you were going to have this kind of integrity in this situation, and you're not. But yeah, anyway, thanks. It's good. Right. So the WordPress way, I mentioned before that speaking of value, the value used to be worded, we are committed to open source and the WordPress way, because I think the WordPress community and automatic WordPress itself embodied a lot of these values in certain ways. And so we were like, hey, this is cool. There's like a level of cooperation and understanding. And maybe like the old dream. So some of this was here, and there was a dream. It was like, we would have events, and competing companies would like work together on things and be like, hey, I solved this problem. Here's how I did it, and then we'd solve problems together and stuff. And it's like, there's, but like WooCommerce and Easy Digital Downloads and GiveWP, there's so many issues, like including some of that Stripe Connect stuff. It's like, oh, we did it. Here's how we did it. Oh, here's something that came up. We're dealing with the spam issue. Oh, here's how we're blocking the spam. Let's do this together. And we never thought like, hey, we're competitors, maybe we shouldn't do this. But even, more than just competing, there was the different plugin companies and theme companies where like, we did this one thing really well. Like the theme companies were theme companies, the plugin companies were plugin companies, the plugin that, did directory stuff, didn't do gateway stuff, it was kind of like, hey, let's everyone do one thing well, and people can pick and choose and kind of Lego things together. And that model was more supported. A lot of the companies were sharing their code for free or open. Like we used to build integration plugins that were free. So when we would go to like another product company that had paid plugins, I said, hey, we'll build the integration together, and it's free. This will encourage people to use both of our tools, and we'll both be incentivized to maintain the free plugin. And so this was a dream, all of us kind of working together on open source. But what happens over time is like the opposite of all this, right? So the companies stop working together, and that plugin integration issue, sometimes the other company would have a similar plugin that you had to pay for. So it's like, hey, if you want to integrate with PayMasters Pro, you got to buy our $100 add-on over here. And it's like, wait, we were building one together, but you're charging, and they do different things. And like, why can't we just have one thing? And then of course, like plugins started overlapping and doing different things. It's like, hey, we used to be an LMS plugin, but now we also do payments. And like we're a directory, but now we're also like a login plugin. I think like a profile plugins turned into membership plugins. And I think everyone's seeing this in the WordPress space, and it's a form plugin, and then it advertises all the other plugins in the business, and it kind of takes over my WordPress.org search and like inserts things and like its own versions of things in there. It's like, it's less true that people are building plugins that do one thing. And to be honest, there's no leadership in the core team, from Matt on down to try to help direct this stuff. Like I always thought, in my version of a WordPress Foundation is working in a core team, they would find these common things like everyone needs a login. Can we like WooCommerce should not build their own login, and PayMasters Pro build their own login. Let's do it together. We need like a dashboard thing. Can we all just build like a front end profile together? And I think there's a version of WordPress where like those common components were picked out and then like leaned into, and we all built it together. there was like a summit of LMS plugins that came together, and it's like, hey, can we build some common rules and database structures and things? Is there like a core to the courses that we can build and do it all in the same way, so that, and kind of basically like push LMS companies back to this version of where it used to be like, hey, can we build something together that's core, and then like just build our businesses in different spaces? And nothing went with that. I'm pretty sure like that's not going anywhere. It was like disbanded for not doing anything. But you're asking all these businesses to like give up their money, like for what? Like, and there was no leadership to like incentivize them on the other end. It's kind of like, no, like, give away your stuff and stop making money, and then, cross your fingers. There was no, it's like it takes strong leadership to like manage through those things, and to, to pick winners. And to be honest, like if you're like, hey, there's a bunch of plugins that make money on this, and then, we're going to ask the community which one they like, and then this is the one that's going to come in the core. I mean, I don't know, it would have been tough, and then is that the best version of things? It's kind of like, I like that the market works and everyone can build their own version, and the users will speak and they'll pick which version they like, right? So it's like, you shouldn't necessarily just have one membership plugin in the WordPress space. It's good that there's competition. But also so what those users are doing is they're saying, yes, I want Paid Memberships Pro, and I want the Paid Memberships Pro version of all this other stuff, because I don't want the ads. I don't want it broken. I don't want the version that isn't going to be maintained as well as what we do. So kind of this is what we saw like in the WordPress space. And it was like, hey, we weren't working together. This vision of everyone doing one thing and sharing, there was no leadership to kind of, direct what's happening between all of our product companies. And everyone's trying to make money in the same way. Like Automatic literally competes with like every business in the WordPress space. They have hosting, they have services, they have, plugins and themes and paid services. And then, stuff like this, like when we're like, oh, does the WordPress way mean, don't lock people out of the back end because, they stop paying? Or does the WordPress way, I don't think so. I mean, it doesn't seem that that's what it means to most people who are actually building things. Does the WordPress way mean like you should put all your code on GitHub for free and allow people to see it even if they're not paying for your code? It's like, I mean, try to open a pull request on, WooCommerce subscriptions. You can't do it. And even if you find your way in there to do it, there's no, like, like they're not incentivized to kind of work on different things. And so it's like, oh, actually, like we're more open source than WordPress is. Like we make different decisions on these things. We don't kind of try to make as much money from Stripe and the fees and keep people from changing that. We labor over it to make it as, user friendly as possible. And it's like, we publish all our code for free. We encourage people to use it for free. And so we took off that bit. There is, I think the WordPress way is like, it's in, I mean, it's honestly just, I don't know. It's Matt's way. I think there's people over there like having fun at WordCamp US and kind of getting back onto the status quo, and they're building cool stuff and building websites and happy and getting things done. But I think what's true is folks who use Paid Memberships Pro as a platform, Paid Memberships Pro becomes the most important software on their website. It's the thing that understands them. It puts the members first, front and center. Like this thing is about managing members, and we build tooling around that, and we make that a focus. The content controls are built in. It's like, hey, we have to control what people have to see, and we take it seriously. And we have improvements recently on making, protecting not just the content, but the files, and making sure that people can't get in through the APIs and stuff. Like we take it seriously, and we're focused on it. We're going to do that really well. And we have our own gateway integration because people want Paid Memberships Pro. It's like, hey, get paid. Anyway, we're building the software that serves, and we have whatever it is, 90 add-ons and hundreds of repositories and probably hundreds of code snippets, all to like serve that common customer, and we do it really well. And so we want to make sure that like we protect this Paid Memberships Pro site. And in our minds, like the switch that we flipped in our minds, like when we think about our company, is we're no longer a WordPress plugin or a WordPress business. We're a platform that has WordPress in the stack. And so like I don't go to the PHP or MySQL conferences. I don't worry about, those communities and how they interact. Like they kind of generate software that's good to use. And this is the flip side of like, they're the mindset of the core team, or like we build this and hey, you're free to use it. So it's like, cool, we keep it in our stack. It works really well for what we have, but we don't have to integrate because it's not happening. And there's a bunch of friction. Like there's no leadership for it. There's no like, we should embrace Gutenberg because that's like, hey, let's all support Gutenberg and try to have one way of doing this. Gutenberg wasn't developed in a way to kind of serve all the different use cases of Paid Memberships Pro, including, that was a Freudian slip, but not a good one, like WordPress or Paid Memberships Pro. And so like, we don't have to support it. Like let the marketplace work out. People will pick the builder that works best for them. And so we're just PMPro is a platform that sits on top of WordPress. It's still, you have to run WordPress and WordPress hosting works for it. But these also are things that if we keep leading in the direction where we're going, we're like, there's more competition, less cooperation, things, less leadership. That may not necessarily be the case, right? So we kind of want, it's good for us that we think of ourselves as the platform, and that's in the tech stack, because that gives us some flexibility to, like, we don't want to break your other WordPress plugins. We want them to always work on Paid Memberships Pro. But we're ready to like fork Paid Memberships Pro if we have to keep things working. And it's like, hey, we'll be like WordPress compatible. And I don't think it'll get so bad that like plugins will stop working, but there's little code decisions that we made, like different plugins require different libraries. And sometimes it's like, hey, we have a common library and this is like a coding cooperation thing. It's like, can we make sure that we all load the same version of this library? And if I load mine first, it doesn't break your stuff. And if you load yours first, it doesn't break this stuff. And that was always like this. It's tough. It's a hard problem. And actually, there are kind of solutions, but like there's not leadership to like really like kind of enforce a common solution. I think it's getting pushed there really slowly. But we use like, it's like very subtle. We're like, you know what? Like we're going to lean towards Paid Memberships Pro users. Like, you know what I mean? Like we don't have to do it the quote unquote WordPress way just because there's some dream that this is the way everyone wants to do it. We like, which way is going to make Paid Memberships Pro sites less likely to break? Cool. Let's do it that way. So someone else who's not using Paid Memberships Pro or using an ancillary way, like it might, this other plugin might break because we made a decision, and it's like, cool, that plugin has to figure out how to do it. And we're open source and we're still friendly. We send people notes, and when we detect it, we send, we'll say what to do, and we try to avoid it as much as possible. But there's a really subtle shift where you're like, I can kind of like, make it less likely for our users to break, and it's slightly more likely for the other ones. And it's like, hey, let's just be focused on our users. Like it's part of that lean that we're doing. Yeah. So cool. I've been talking about the code. The code is important. Like we're a software company, and it's like open source software, and this is the core of what we do. But being open is about more than software here. So, it says committed to open source, but we also are committed to like open communication and open practices, and we try to be open, within the team, like fast feedback, when things are going wrong or we have ideas for improvement. And, sharing things like the Slacks are mostly open. I do sometimes put on what I call them like the idea police. Like in our Slack, we try to create for some things little pockets where like, okay, the marketing team can kind of talk amongst themselves without developers asking pesky questions, and the developers can talk over here without the marketers asking pesky questions, because it's tough to like bring people up to speed as you're trying to have an in-depth conversation. And of course, like our managers and directors up top, the leadership team, we have conversations that we don't want to scare the employees. It's like part of our job is to insulate them from some of these stresses of like, oh my God, what are we going to do about being, removed from the WordPress.org repository, or making that decision ourselves. Anyway, but despite that, we lean towards open whenever possible. It's kind of like, hey, like, so there's a small rule. It's like if a conversation you're having by DM isn't really private and could be in a public channel, have that conversation in a public channel so that we all can learn from this. And I think we saw that like Chris Badgett was in the chat from Lifter LMS, and we've gotten involved at Lifter LMS. And so they were more, when I went into their Slack, there was more conversations going on by DM. And I was like, you know, when people talk to me, I was like, we should make this public. Let's go public. And we kind of from the top down, let's encourage people to be more public. And I think they saw the benefit of that. Like they transformed from like, and their Slack is much more active and people can see things that other folks are talking about. And you get these quick wins of like, oh, actually, I know that customer you're talking about. I hear they did this thing, you know, oh, okay. You know, and it makes it kind of, you know, cross team communication is greased that way. But also we communicate with our customers in, you know, open and transparent ways. It's kind of, I take a lot of offense. There was like about that fee issue. I don't want to keep bringing it up, but some folks are like, someone called it a dirty little secret. And I was like, oh man, that sucks. Like, cause we are trying, you know, like there's a lot of stuff on the site. It's like, what can we do to make it so people notice this message that talks about the fees without, you know what I mean? Like making it red and 60-point font and it comes up all the time and it has a sound effect, you know, and floats around until you click it away. Like it's like somewhere between like, you know, just showing the message as text and that we kind of like, it was like, how can we highlight it or make sure we put it in front? And if you did that for everything you want to communicate to your customers, it would just be like a list of like 100 important things before you could like get into the software. And actually that's like a pattern that's pretty good. I think we don't use that. We should more as like, but of course people just check a box and move on. It's like, hey, before you go, you got to read this thing. Like, did you set up your webhook? Yes. Okay, cool. You know,
the public messages is also something we encourage in our Slack community. We try not to have DMs unless it's like this past week, one of the community members asked for a developer and said, please DM me if you are serious about helping me build my paid membership pro site. And so in that scenario, they did move conversations to DM because it's a little bit more personal information. But for the most part, if I do hear about unsolicited DMs, I'm like, hey, let's move this back to public. That way it helps everybody.
Yep. And we can't read DMs. And if we could, we wouldn't, but we do get like it shows the number, like the Slack report tells us how many DMs, and it comes up like on our weekly calls. We're like, how comes there's twice as many private communication as usual? And it's like, you know, I'm asking, is it you guys? Cause you should be pushing it to public, like Sam just said. And it's like, you know, in some cases, like it just must be, which is good. Like, I don't know, two people in the community talking to each other, you know, fine. We can't really police that. But among our team, it's always like, hey, if you can put that in public. We've also in the past shared things like transparency reports about the business and how much money it makes and different stats and things. And I'm always open. Like if you ask me, I will tell you. And I think it's been a while since we published a transparency report. I got to figure it out. I have like a little bit of a, I don't know, like a thing about it where in my personal, everybody, let's get personal. Let's get human. In my personal life, I'm trying not to give my unsolicited opinion, and I'm waiting for people to actually ask me for advice or stuff like that, right? And I think online, I'm kind of just waiting for someone to ask me, how many members do you have? How much money do you make? What's your profit margin and stuff? So if you're curious, ask, and then we'll publish it. But I kind of wrote up drafts for the past couple of years, and I'm like, no one's asked me about this. I'm not going to publish it. And I think I maybe have to get over that because people do benefit from those. Like I said, if we show how we're operating, you know, they can learn from us. And I always thought too, like with respect to like transparency on the business of how many employees we have, how much money is involved. It's like some people think we're just like a giant business and we're scamming everyone and taking too much money. And then some people think we're like a really small business and we're going to go out of business. And it's like the truth is in the middle. And so it's like, I'd rather them just know and kind of be able to make a judgment, you know, if that, because it is important. You're kind of like, I'm going to start my membership site on a membership platform. Like, is this a startup that, you know, is going to sell out soon or break down or, you know, pivot to an AI company? Or like, is this Paid Memberships Pro, which is a business that's been running for over 10 years and is never going to sell and is committed to serving membership platforms going forward in a bigger way? Oh, cool. I feel more confident. You know, and they do so with like a profitable business involved. And so like, they're going to be okay. And we try to be, honest and open about things like slip ups when we make mistakes or have bugs or security issues or things like that. And as we said before, like having these open office hour discussions around our core values is part of our, our attempt to be more open about how we work. If there's any questions about any of that, I was going to talk about open hosting then.
No, you can go ahead and go on.
Sweet. So open hosting, I think there's some companies called like openhosting.net.com, whatever. But what I'm really thinking about is like website hosting with open source values. And that's what we are trying to make with PMPro Hosting, like the hosting for Pay Memberships Pro platforms. And at high level, our hosting effort right now is in the alpha. So if you go to paidmembershipspro.com/hosting, whenever you're watching this video, you'll either see a application form or in the future kind of other ways for you to, just sign up or trial the hosting once we launch. But right now we're in an alpha where we have a small group of customers that we're helping, and we're making sure we're getting ready to scale this business. Like we know we can host Paid Memberships Pro sites well. Paid Memberships Pro itself is hosted on Paid Memberships Pro. And until like 2016 or so, Kim and I would do consulting and build folks' websites, and we managed something like 30 to 50 at a time membership sites for other folks. And a lot of times we manage their hosting, either ourselves or like through other services and stuff. And so like, the hosting product that we're building is specifically how we host paidmembershipspro.com and get it to load in like a 0.4 seconds or whatever, and run in a performant way. And, all the monitoring we do and all the security and spam protection that we do and the caching that we do for performance and, all the decisions we make about hosting, the backup, how we do backups. Also the things we don't worry about. So like redundancy of, if our hosting provider DigitalOcean goes offline, we don't try to spin up our website on another host intermediate. It's kind of okay. Like everyone just takes a break of Paid Memberships Pro being on a website for an hour or so. But we, the way we have the stack set up, we run, bleeding edge versions of Paid Memberships Pro in a test mode. And we won't force that on our customers, of course. But anyway, the way that we host Paid Memberships Pro and the values that we have on the hosting, we're bundling that up and we're going to share how we do it. And we're also going to offer the just do it for folks. Like we'll manage it. So coming soon, we'll have a blog post, which is like, here's how to host a membership site on DigitalOcean with Apache, MySQL, PHP, and WordPress, and all these other tools, Redis, and the tooling that we use. And it'll be like start to finish, create a droplet on DigitalOcean, and also using Cloudflare as an application firewall and DNS layer. It's like, here's exactly how we set it up and how you can do it too for like the minimal cost. And then for an added cost, you can do it and we'll actually manage it for you because it's a bit technical. But some folks have done it. Like we've been surprised. Some not necessarily super technical, not developer. I don't know if they would label themselves as developers, but they figured out how to do the same kind of thing. But we've perfected it and we're going to sell access to that. But what makes it open is, there's some core values. And hey, if we did hosting, how would we do it? And we would focus on transparency and control, portability, customization and understanding, and also using other open source solutions instead of closed source solutions. So I'll maybe go into those 4 things like in a little bit of detail. So in our hosting transparency, like I said, we're going to publish a blog post. Here's exactly how to do it. If you want to recreate our setup, this is what we do. The same way we create code and we push it out, here's how it works. There's like a delay on these things because as soon as you invite people to your open source code, like you have to manage it. You have to be ready to kind of answer their questions. And also, the other thing is a responsibility that we're not going to switch. That's actually probably the biggest thing to keep us from sharing code is when we feel like we might scrap it and build a new one. Like we don't want, if people start using the thing that we release, it feels bad to then like, oh shoot, now we do something slightly different. But there will be a path for there's internal tooling to manage our host, and we're excited. We're like, oh man. So as an example, you need to email from your website. That's actually really complicated, and you have to like integrate through an SMTP provider or like another email service, and all those, the tooling for doing that. This feels like one of those things that like a strong, WordPress leadership would have been like, hey, let's all just do email this way. And have like, different options, but like there's one core way to do it. But we're going to do that. We're going to be like, hey, for everyone on PMPro Hosting, let's do email this way. And our integration thing won't upsell you and try to make the most money. It's just kind of like, we feel this is the best way and like the most performant, uses open source tools to serve email from your site. It's how we want to do it. And, we wrapped it for you. And so there's some code around that. And it's kind of basically, we'll have like a fork of these like email SMTP plugins that doesn't have ads into different things. And it just does the thing it says it did. So it's exciting. Like months from now, call me on this in a year or whatever, be like, hey, where's that SMTP plugin? But I'm guessing it's on GitHub and you can download it and use it for free. It's there for us to manage for ourselves, but like, this is useful for other people. Let's share. So anyway, we're like both like how-to guides, but also literally we're going to be sharing code related to this. And also stuff like potentially in the future, like a blueprint on DigitalOcean that allows you to kind of like skip some steps and set up your droplet. But also like transparency around billing. It's important to us that, Sammy froze. I don't know if it was me, but it's also done. Transparency. Okay, sorry.
We've been hearing everything, so I don't know which one.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I was saying transparency around billing. We, at the end of the day, like at the server level, you're buying like CPUs and memory. And it's kind of like, you're buying these CPUs, this memory, and you actually have it on your site and you can use it and it's yours. And it's not kind of abstracted away in a layer. So portability, one of the guiding principles for how we're building the hosting is like one site per container. And this literally means like one site on a DigitalOcean droplet. And it's not, so for us, if we host 100 sites, it's not kind of like an architecture that kind of spreads those sites. There's like the databases are all over here and the web servers are all over here and the caching is all over here. But like all these websites are like safely and securely like intermingled on one. It's like, no, like we set this up in one container, just like we said you could on your own on DigitalOcean. And so that's portable in that, like, if you don't want to host with us anymore, we can literally back up the site to a DigitalOcean snapshot and just hand it to you. And then you can spin it up on your own DigitalOcean, droplet of your own. Or we want to make it as easy as possible to back up the files in the database of WordPress. Like, we're not going to lock you into things. That's important. That's one of those things that's like an odd business. Like, please don't focus on the thing that keeps people from cancel. They're like, I would cancel, but it's going to be such a pain to move. Let's make it easier for people to stop paying us. But we do feel like that value, that's why how the open source is helping us make these decisions. Like, this is the more open way to do it. It's going to make it easier both to come in and out, actually, and it's going to appeal to the people that we want to work with, that they can run this code on their own and they don't feel like it only works for us. Like, what's kind of exciting about the hosting is because now we're getting into, we just had someone try out, like we set up a trial site for them and they went in and they're like, oh my God, this is awesome. It's so fast. It's so good. How do I get my site on this other host to work that way? And the reality is, like, it's not a paid memberships pro setting, and it's not like a setting in WordPress or even like their caching plugin. Like, the real secret sauce that makes this work is all the decisions we made at like the hardware and the server stack and the caching services that go on top of the hardware and what we do in Cloudflare. And that stuff like isn't under our control, but now it will be for our customers on the hosting side. And you either will need to move to PMPro Hosting to get that performance, or another host that kind of adopts these same kinds of things, So yeah, we're sharing what we're doing. We're making it portable so you can use this elsewhere, but it is a different way to host websites. there is some learnings that come out of it. Like we've already made improvements to the core plugin to make it more object cache compatible. And we'll have some documents that like, some things you can do or things you can avoid to make your site more performant that maybe don't involve some of the hardware layer. Like, so some of that will leak out, but the majority of like the boost comes from, stuff at the hardware level. So customization and understanding, like we still want things to be as flexible as possible. So we really are going to build like a default stack. But if, hey, I have a different, I want to use a different firewall. want to use a different service for email. I want to use a different piece for this component. Anything like that, like we're going to make things as flexible as possible. And kind of the understanding bit is, so this is in contrast to some other hosts where it's kind of, and some of them are flexible too in different things. So it's like, but some of them may be like, hey, if you're not using our caching, like a bunch of stuff breaks. You can't use your own caching system in here. Or they, their system is so spread out and custom, or like hey, I want to put an exception for the caching, like cache everything except this page, or like a rule. This is a common thing you would do on a host. And it's kind of like, yeah, well, it's not open source, right? It's their own proprietary caching system that's hidden behind the scenes. And you kind of have to talk through a tech support person and make sure you're on the same page to tweak things. And so one of the values that we have is, we will offer to manage this pretty technical hosting setup for you. But at any time, any component, you're like, hey, I need to potentially do something different. We're not going to treat you like a kid and not tell you how it works or allow you to change it or force you to go through our support to change it. Like, we're going to give you access to customize your site, and we're going to try to treat you like an adult and help you to figure out how to do that stuff. Because our customer is like that. Our customer is capable of rolling up their sleeves and getting dirty and figuring things out. And we will, so we're not like, hey, let us manage this. We know how to do it better than you. It's like, hey, we'll set like a really good smart default that is probably, better than the default you're getting elsewhere. But like, you come in and it's your website. Like you can make a decision to do something different if you want. And we're going to try to educate you and make sure that you have visibility and understanding when you make those kinds of choices. And then finally, we're going to, we try to support open source solutions. So this is coming up with, like the caching system or how we do like malware scanning. There's open source solutions for that versus closed source. And we kind of realized, hey, we are still friendly with some of these WordPress companies that I didn't call out on the call today. And like, we could have like a business relationship, like, hey, these people have like a service that will do security, a service that will do, performance, a service that will fit in here, that will do email. And we're like, yeah, you know what? Let's build it in an open source way. Like, one, like our customers want that. Two, it's like, as much as I want to, go into business relationships and trust these things, it's more, this is another reason people use open source software is the control, right? So it's like, I know that this open source method will always do this thing. And if they don't, it's open source and it's not tangled up in a business relationship. So we can just fork it and continue to do it the way that we were doing it. So we're building like a system that will be more robust and like, capable of change. It's like the internet. It's weird. Like, we build these websites and it's like, I wish, you build a house, maybe every 10, 20 years, like you want like a new shower head, or you maybe want like a different sink or a nicer bathroom. But like a house built in the 50s, like still works. And like, it didn't have to be, well, you changed the roof, I guess. I don't know. Maybe house maintenance
might need new plumbing at that point.
Yeah, there's some stuff you got to do. But man, it's like, dude, your website every year, I feel like you build your website and like it's 2 years later, like it's out of date. Everyone does different stuff nowadays. I wish that weren't the case, but it is like, it's constantly moving. And this is one of the reasons people use Pay Memberships Pro, because it's open source. And that same value, our selections on what we use on the hosting side is like, hey, let's use the one that's more committed to open source. It's going to be in alignment with us for a number of reasons, including we'll be sure this thing will keep doing what they say they do. And if it isn't, it's open source, so we can fork it. So that's PMPro Hosting. So I give a little bit of a pitch for our new hosting. You can still apply for the alpha period. I think, if it's almost like a wait list at this point. So it's like, hey, if we don't Some of these folks who sign up for alpha don't get in. You might be able to squeeze in, or you could be first in line for the beta. And maybe a month from now, hopefully, we have figured out some of the automation on the onboarding, and also the pricing that we're going to settle on. And we'll have that blog post out sooner than that, which is like, here's how you do it yourself, and start gathering interest, and then open up the beta period for folks.
And PMPro Plus is included in the hosting plan, so you eliminate at least one bill.
Yeah. That is kind of TBD, but I mean, that is, I think
right
that's some version of
that. Don't quote me
for the
year,
alpha.
But
oh yeah. I mean, if you're watching this in real time or like soon after it's posted and you get into the alpha, those folks are getting like a really good deal. And like we, we'll, like we've done with PayMerchants Pro, folks who signed up early at a lower price, we reserve the right to change our mind on this, but it's always in our interest to kind of like just, be grateful to those folks and let them have a good deal and focus on acquiring new customers is kind of the move we always do. Yeah, but it will be one place. I don't want to talk because all these things can be subject to change, but we're figuring out what the hosting costs, but definitely like, we don't want to bill you multiple times if you're a PMPro customer. So like there will be some kind of discount and bundling of PMPro Plus and the hosting. And then there's also a bunch of services, like you may be paying a premium fee for a backup plugin for, like a security plugins, for caching plugins, for other performance related plugins that are good and do their thing, but it's kind of like we have our own version of that. So if you adopt our version, you get, that gets bundled into the price of your hosting. So yeah, it potentially is going to be like a really good, we would like to, like, we should be able to get the pricing to land in a spot where like this is a smart financial move and like a smart move because you want to maintain your site on optimal hosting. Yeah, good deal.
Awesome. Well, before we hear our final words from the other co-founder, Kim Coleman, a little bit of housekeeping. Our upcoming events that we have for next week, we actually have 3 events, and one of them is with a guest speaker. So that will be really fun. On September 9th, which is Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, we'll be hosting a community co-working hour that is exclusive to our Slack community. You have to be in there to get the link to join our Google Meet, but that is a great time for you to connect with Kim Coleman and I and other peers. It really has turned into an hour where we help you with your PMPro site. We might do a demo based on your specific needs, and you also can meet other people building PMPro sites. On the 11th at 11 a.m., that is our guest speaker. We're going to have Derek Asher, I want to say is how you say his last name, but I'm going to confirm with him before we go live. He has built Conversion Bridge plugin, which is an analytics plugin. And so he's going to be talking about how you use analytics and conversion tracking to grow your membership site, which segues us to the next open office hours on the 18th, where Kim's going to talk about cookie consent. So, you do have to have cookie consent to be able to track some of the analytics and everything. But we're going to talk about Conversion Bridge and how that works with PMPro.
Yeah, I think that should be a great show, because if you're like a lot of folks that use Google Analytics for metrics, and one, it used to work a lot better, and 2, like there used to be less, kind of regulatory stuff around, making sure that you monitor things from your own country, and things like that. I think Derek and his product help you kind of upgrade to the modern metric stack, which is, using Conversion Bridge into one of these other services. That's not either. I think it supports Google Analytics for sure, or you probably have to switch to like a different service, maybe to maintain regulatory support, so he'll help you through that.
And then on the 12th at 9 a.m. Eastern, I will be back with another coding episode with Coding with Sam. So, and if you want to know what I will be coding, because we do send out event reminders via email, but if you want to know what I will actually be coding, the Slack community is also where you get that information. Christy will post it the Thursday prior to us going live of what I will be coding, and I don't look at it. I go in blind, just like you'd be going in blind on how to code it to your site. Cool. Well, Jason, thank you for our 5 consecutive open office hours with you. It has been a fun time. And it's been nice to dive into our core values because we do have them on our site, and everybody at the company holds them real close. So
yeah, it's been good to put them out there in the public, talk about them, force us to think through them a little bit. It's been really good. And I look forward to whenever I get back in the open office hours, what the future topics for me will be.
I have to start planning Q4, so if you have ideas, throw them out. So perfect. Well, here's a quick ad at the end from Kim Coleman.
I hope you got some value out of what you just watched. If you're serious about building a profitable membership site, the fastest way to launch or scale is with a premium plan at paidmembershipspro.com. We've made it as affordable as possible to get started, and most people who upgrade stick with us for years. Why? Because they're making money, and we keep delivering expert support, premium add-ons, and a private community of over 1,000 creators building businesses just like yours. Click the link to compare plans or keep learning. We'll see you in the next video.